Hi, it's Paul Banis, the GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at greatdad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series talking to dads about all kinds of different things. I'm really excited today to talk to Mike Gardon, who's kind of does a lot of what I do, which is to help dads navigate both job and home life. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this.
Yes, well, I guess first of all is I know you have three boys, and you're kind of like really in the sweet spot where they need a lot of attention. They're not babies, but they're kind of like in that mid area where they're really developing. What got you interested in, or maybe it's obvious, what got you interested in working with fathers?
Well, I've always loved kids. I was fortunate enough to grow up in an extended family where I was the second oldest of about a little over 30 cousins. So I grew up just always holding a baby and loving the idea of kids, and I always knew I wanted to have kids. And as I had my own, obviously it I started to have different work challenges, right? You want to be a career oriented person, you want to achieve, then you have like how do you strike this balance? What do the kids really need that you're not able to provide when you're pulled in a bunch of different directions? And I just really found the topic interesting. The idea of how we create resilience, how we segment our lives and try to design very purposeful lives from the career standpoint, because yeah, we're going to work and we're going to spend a whole bunch of time at work and away from our families, but how do we generate the most energy, and how do we become the best versions of ourselves so we can show up for our kids and our families when they need it? And it was just interesting enough for me to really dedicate a big chunk of my time.
Yeah, I love that. Very well put. I think that dads kind of divide into this kind of group who'd be interested in our subject, who are either they're already really good fathers at home and they're like aware and they need to figure out how to manage the work life, or maybe they're struggling a little bit with the work life because they have to take the kids to soccer practice or whatever, all the demands that dads have to do, or they are they work a lot and they are maybe just waking up because somebody has told them, hey, you're missing out on all the best times of life. And how do you pull back? How do you start to create boundaries? Is that what you see too? Is that there are these two types of people, and how are they motivated?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I start with just like what is the normal track of life, right? We all end up getting jobs. We need to have jobs. And that takes by default a large amount of our time and our energy. And depending on how we manage those things, they can bleed over into what we might call our off hours. But we also have this like, we want to be there for our kids. We want to do the best for our kids. But we also have this internal drive of what I think every person has, which is we have a drive to be creative, to be accomplished, to do things in this world that benefit others. Okay. And so I think sometimes dads get conflicted. Okay, I'm working super hard. It's in service of my family. I am sacrificing for my family. And I think, our generations, right? We grew up with parents who had to make a ton of sacrifices, um, you know, early on, and to really provide a better life. And I think things have shifted a little bit in the way the world works, in that you can provide a great life and you have the unique ability to design your life in a way that gets that creative juice, that accomplishment, the money, whatever it is, those external things, but also allows you to be extremely present and be able to be a shaper of your kids instead of just telling them what to do or providing the things for them. And that's what's really interesting to me about the times we live in, is that, we people get a job, do their work. That's the traditional way. And right now we're able to do things like, I get to talk to you on a podcast from my home office, and I'm able to design my work life in a way that allows me to coach all of my kids' sports, be there if the school has a problem and needs to call somebody. Like, I'm the first call because I have consciously set up my life to do that. And so spreading the word about how we can take our unique abilities and our advantages as fathers and use those, and sort of ideate and find other ways to use those and leverage those advantages in the world to get both, is really what I'm all about, and what I think a lot of fathers need to hear.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that right now everybody's talking about this toxic idea of masculinity, and I'd like to redefine that to be like a toxic definition of masculinity. But classically, masculinity was about being the provider, and quite often men were put in that position of like sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice to get your family, make sure that they're okay. But at the end of the day, dads missed out on all the not only the joy of parenting, but the transference of values for fathers. And I'm also very interested in that whole aspect. I've got a course called the intentional parent, intentional father. But that intentionality seems to be something new. Millennials and maybe younger are open to that, or more receptive to that idea. Is that what you see?
Yeah, I
I mean, is it a
think,
generational thing where the group is focused on intentionality? If we
yeah,
can use that word.
I mean, it's interesting because it's a multifaceted problem, like everything. And I feel like when, our we're so polarized, like our society is so polarized. So you hear toxic masculinity, and then you think the only other way is the traditional man in the 50s, who had a wife making dinner and all that. Like, and I
Right.
think the intentionality piece is really it's a movement directed towards the middle. Like, this isn't
Hmm.
right, this isn't right. What is the truth in the middle? And I think it's hard to parse out because it's multifaceted, right? So I guess my view is that, if, like, the kids, right, my kids and kids into their 20s, let's say, they've grown up in the internet era. So they've been able to consume a lot more information, and they've grown up in a way that they see their parents going to the office, and driving, commuting to and from, and dressing up and all of these things, and hearing their parents' headaches, and they're like, that doesn't sound all that great. And
Right. Yeah.
over here on YouTube, I'm seeing people, create businesses and lifestyles and make a lot of money. And so there's got to be something to this different way, and I need to find out what it is for me. So I think kids are way more open to that and seeking that intentional area where they can build a life, like they're not trying to escape from. They're not going to try to just go retire one day. They want to sort of enjoy what they do and have a great balanced life.
Well, I think that's also that is frightening for parents with kids who are a little bit older, because what they see is the kids getting out of school and not following traditional paths. I don't think traditional paths exist anymore. There aren't any bank training programs or training programs, and maybe packaged goods still has some training programs, but that doesn't exist anymore. But parents are worried because the kids come out and they want to find some fulfilling aspect of life, and yet it's not really defined. It's hard. I think it's hard for us to be optimistic but they also are living in a different generation that'll have completely different rules. Do you work with younger people too, or is your specialty really you work mostly with dads who are in the like 35 to 50 plus range?
Yeah. So, my coaching is really, it's not directed specifically at dads, but it is directed at, people who have been in corporate. I typically work with older, and it is men mostly, but not exclusively, who are sort of trapped. They realize that, they've been slaving away and doing all of these things because that was the definition of success, and now they're waking up and looking at life a little differently. They're trying to plan their next chapter, for their family to become the best version of themselves, and provide and do all of those things. Um, but I do actually work with younger people. So, how I work with younger people, I actually teach a college level course right now in my hometown, to 20 college students, and I teach them my basically what I came up with to figure out my life, which I call advantage mapping. And I'm teaching this inside an entrepreneurial course to really help kids, critically think about their future and about their present. What are the skills and attributes and things that they have at their disposal today? What hard advantages they have, and how do they align, how do they create a more aligned path with their natural curiosities, um, and then explore within that. So we kind of, it's a narrowing frame, but then explore within that all of the different ways that they could go about that journey. And it's designed to help these kids figure out a foundational sense of who they are and what they can do, and then look at the world from that lens and say, you know what, like maybe this YouTube or influencer thing is just a shiny object that I'm chasing. However, I could potentially use part of that on my journey, and it's not like all or nothing. Um, so I'm trying to get kids to really think and avoid the mistakes that I see a lot of 50-year-olds that come to me saying, did I waste 30 years of my life? Like, that is a really, really difficult regret to grapple with. Um, and so I'm working with the younger kids and trying to understand how my ideas resonate there. And it's really the whole thing is in service of my three kids. I think about what is the biggest problem they are going to face in their lives. And it is this ability to change and to be resilient, and be rooted in their advantages and what they can do to help other people, regardless of what technology happens, what socioeconomic, what political things happen. I want them to be able to look at the world and say, you know what, I can do this and I can change. And so I'm really a student of the issues that are affecting the older folks and how they get trapped in this area, and trying to push my learnings down down the age spectrum, and ultimately equip my kids so that I know that they're going to be the most flexible, resilient, and adaptable people that they can possibly be.
Yeah, great. So it's so the dads who come to you. I mean, I did see some women testimonies from women on
Yeah.
the site, so that you do. I know you have women clients, but the dads, are they usually in a career transition mode when they talk to you, where they're like they know they've got to get out and they want help getting out, or are some of them proactive enough to know to start asking the questions? Because I would guess, or I guess I know that the best time to be asking all the questions that I've seen in some of the materials that you have on your website is more when the career is going really well and you're looking forward.
Yeah, you have to be vigilant. Or that's what I want everybody to understand.
Yeah, I think
But
nowadays you do. I mean,
yeah,
everybody says you're going to have 4 or 5 careers during your life. If you're not continuously flexible and willing to change, you're done.
exactly. See around the corners. What's coming, and build a very flexible plan, about what you're going to do, in the future. But to answer your question, the majority of people come to me in some type of crisis. They have
Right.
either come to the realization that they have spent a whole bunch of their working life working for someone else's dream and not given their own needs and wants and creative outlet proper examination. And they're looking at how can I use what I have to build a more free lifestyle. And freedom isn't just, oh, more money, go lay on a beach. We're talking about active work that lights us up, serving people, and so that we feel good about what we do and maybe never even want to retire because we set up a life where we can work part-time from a computer when I take a vacation in Italy with my wife or whatever that might be. But to be really, really intentional about why we want that freedom, quote unquote. And so we dig really deeply into that. And a lot of the reasons come down to relationships. I have I'm using examples like I have college or kids that are going off to college or are in college. I feel like I haven't been there for them in the ways that they have needed, right? I haven't been an example for them to follow their dreams. I've told them, "Oh, you can do anything. You can be anything you want to be," but I've never taken the risk to step outside my comfort zone, and now I feel misaligned with that. Like how I want to feel good about myself at 80, at 90 on, on my deathbed. Like I want to know that I went for it and I was this example. Um, and a lot of times it is like, okay, yeah, there are changes coming. I'm feeling pressure from the younger people, right? They're nipping at my heels. There's ageism. There's a lot of different things involved in this, but it's like I've accomplished everything and I don't want to continue doing this for the next 10, 15 years of my life. I want to go explore and I want to use my creativity to unleash a new level of growth and not just for me, but also for everybody in my life. I want them to experience the best version of myself. And to me, it starts with work because that is the most time consuming, most energy consuming part of our lives.
Yeah. Um, don't you think, I mean, I work definitely, I mean, that's a huge part of your lives. Do you think you could define yourself as a dad and have work come second? Do you think being a dad is enough of a career for some of us?
Yes, you definitely can, right? I mean, there are people who, you know, don't take the promotion path, right? Because
Yeah.
they're like, I'm cool being an individual contributor, so I have less responsibilities. I can be there for my kids. That absolutely, and that's an intentional decision. But for a lot of people, or at least the people that I work with, they still want this creative outlet. They still want this um, sense of accomplishment on their own terms, something that they build, they create, they own. um, a lot of times, yeah, it is driven by money. Like I have to still maintain my people think that they still have to
Yeah.
maintain their lifestyle. There's other factors involved. So for me, if you have both of those things, you want to be a great dad and you want to accomplish things. I don't think it works the opposite way. I don't think it's less easy for you to define yourself as a dad and then go try to build something. um, it's easier
Oh,
to get the self growth and the sense of identity from building something and chasing your dream. And that transcends down to the relationships. Your energy is better with your kids. You're more in control of your time. Your energy is better with your wife. You're more appreciative because you are taking on challenges that you are choosing to take on and you're growing on that pathway.
okay. So, um, I guess I'm really interested too in how people can understand that, like, that following your passion, everybody says to follow your
Right.
passion, but that's not necessarily a recipe for success.
No.
There are passions that don't pay any money. There are passions that maybe don't really jive with what your capabilities are. How do you,
Correct.
because I know you do a lot of work with people who have not yet made a change. They're thinking, what could I be an entrepreneur? Do I even have the skills to do that? I've heard it's like, working 24/7. It's horrible. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
How do you get at, like, what are realistic passions? Like, I'm I've been doing YouTube for 15 years. I'm not a viral sensation. I mean, I don't know what I did wrong, but not everything that you try out there is going to be, is going to result in success, either economic or otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't use the word passion because I think passions are kind of shiny objects, right? Like
Yeah,
people can say, "Oh, I'm
fleeting
passionate about
potentially. Yeah.
YouTube." It actually means you're interested in YouTube. That
Or
may
I
be
scroll a lot on YouTube. That's not the
right.
same thing.
It looks really, really amazing to see a 20-year-old make $10 million on YouTube. Like, okay, that is a shiny object, right? It's not realistic for the majority of people. Um, so this it's a big, hairy, messy problem. And the structure I've tried to put around it is we have to use decision-making filters. And so it's like, what are the decision-making filters when it seems like I could do almost anything?
Hmm.
Number one is really thinking about like your future vision. What do you want and what do you envision for your life in 10 years? So not your job, your life. When I did this, I was like, I've got 3 kids, man. They're 15 in 15 years, they're gonna be out of the house. Like, what do I want that 15 years to look and feel like? So that's sort of number one, because if I say I want to be home, working at home, that takes a whole bunch of options off the table right off the bat, right? Just that one simple criteria. So then that's maybe layer one. Layer two is, all right, I need a really, really good structure to understand my unique set of advantages and how they intersect with each other. So I created a program called Advantage Mapping. There's a course on the website. You can take it, but it's the foundation of my coaching program. And I basically laid out 8 different ways that I think you can create advantage in your life. It's not just hard skills and personality and things like that. It encompasses some of that, but looking in totality at you and thinking seriously about what are the things that give you energy versus take your energy. What are your natural curiosities? Like there's power and advantage in bringing those to light and giving them the space to be taken seriously. Cause I think a lot of us think, oh yeah, I'm curious about sewing, right? But I couldn't make any money at that. Well, I actually know people that make 6 figures teaching people how to sew old socks. Like you can do these things, but it's not just one or the other. It is a combination. So how do we create a really foundational stack of advantages for you? And then using that as a filter. Because again, if we have a stack where we say, all right, I'm really good at these things. I love this topic. I think this problem is something that I can dedicate my life to. Now we have some sense of purpose and we can start to tune out other stuff like, oh, yeah, everybody online says I should be investing in real estate because that's the way to make passive money, or I should do drop shipping, or all of these different shiny objects, right? We eliminate them through that stack when we really believe in it. And then our ideation is taken from that. How could I potentially use this stack of me in a very, very purposeful way to solve a problem for a group of people that I deeply care about? And we just use a couple of different ideas, a portfolio, if you will. Um, and we go and we start to plan what's the next action I need to take, what's the next piece of information I need to take along that pathway. And so obviously a lot of like a great starting point that most people start with is I do my job, I have these sets of skills. Can I go do that on my own in some capacity? And that is a
Hmm.
great first step.
First question.
Freelancing, consulting, all of those things. It's great. It can bring its own challenges, which going back to your point about passion, um, those challenges are hidden when you just think about your passion. Like the idea of managing people, getting clients, doing payroll, those types of things, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times somebody, yeah, I always use the example, uh, I'm passionate about yoga. So I leave my corporate job, I go build a yoga studio, and I realize I hate running a yoga studio. So so
Right.
the process is really like like taking your core stack of advantages, thinking about your options portfolio, and then through teaching, through curriculum, exposing people to the parts of, owning and running a business that you're going to have to do, and understanding how that affects your thinking and your decision about your long-term future. And there's always ways around those things. We can outsource, we can get help, we can not do certain things that we're not equipped to do. I know when I was always reluctant to be like front and center and be the face of a business. I had always taken kind of backseat roles, but then I realized like I actually have some advantage here, and maybe I don't like it, but maybe I can learn to like it. There's a whole bunch of moving parts to it, but the first, just to summarize, like the first part is getting very crystal clear on the value you can provide in this world, what you want to provide, what's worth your time to work on, and that's your North Star. And then everything else is just learning and updating your point of view along that pathway.
So do you think, I mean, it sounds like almost as if you're saying that anybody could become an entrepreneur or anybody could do this with the proper mapping of interest, curiosity, life goals, and all the rest. Do you think that's true, or do you think that there are people who really, I mean, they don't check the entrepreneur box?
Yeah. I believe that anybody can. I don't believe that everyone should. And
Should.
probably
Right.
the vast majority of people should not. And you can, so I use the term self-directed. You can become self-directed in a job, but you still have to be crystal clear about what you want your future self to look like and be like, and start acting like that person. And you need to understand, like, are my core set of advantages mapped really well to the role I'm in? And if not, there are ways that you can create or augment that role. We've had students that go to their bosses and say, "Hey, look, the job description and what you're asking me to do is taking me away from where I think I'm really, really good and the things that I want to do. Can we figure out how to rearrange this a little bit to use the best version of me and continue to fuel my growth?" And that is perfect within the confines of safety, of a paycheck, all of those things. That's great. You're taking ownership and agency over your career direction. You're exerting yourself, and you are trying to shape that future vision of yourself to give yourself whatever it might be: more time, more freedom, more energy, um, less anxiety, whatever it is. Like, but we have more control and agency and influence over our environments than we think we do. And so that's the whole idea behind being self-directed. What do you want? And then thinking about how you engineer those outcomes.
Yeah, having gone through this whole process, and when I was in my 30s, I know that it's very easy to lose that self-direction part because
Yeah.
you're in a corporation, you're working day to day, you're dealing with the stresses of every day, and you're not thinking of where am I 5, 10 years ago from now. You're paying the mortgage, you're buying a new car, you're doing all these things that are so um, they're almost programmatic. But
Right.
the warning, as somebody who's older has been through it, is the day is coming where ageism creeps in, and it creeps in younger than it ever has before. Here in the Bay Area, if you're 40, you're already
Yeah.
getting past your sell-by date. And then also the pyramid, the restructuring, everything can happen. I just went to a event last night where they were talking about the advent of AI is going to leave, as the internet did, a whole generation of people behind. And those people are 40 to 60 years old, which may be some of our listeners who are right in the middle of parenting, who have the mortgage and everything else, and who don't see this huge tsunami coming of AI that will just fundamentally change everybody's jobs. If you're younger, you'll have time to adapt, but that group won't. Uh, how do you help people make that realization earlier? Maybe, I mean, maybe I struggle with this in my own coaching, is that quite often it's a reactive process rather than a proactive process.
Yeah. It's tough because for somebody to pull the trigger and ask for help, they have to be in a certain amount of pain.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
typically my coaching clients are in that age range, right? Um, but my heart, I want to prevent that. I would like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
work
Me
myself out of
too.
a job. um, and so I try to do it through my point of view and the content that I put out on LinkedIn and other places, just talking about the issues that come ahead, the issues that I warn people about what I call corporate dependence, which is the
Hmm.
default path that you sort of outlined, right? Corporate dependence is the notion that I do everything right.
Right.
I get a job, I get promoted, I do a good job, I take on the next challenge. Then I buy the car, then I buy the house, then I buy the, the country club membership or whatever. And each rung of the ladder up, you inflate your lifestyle and you're still dependent then on the neck on
Yeah,
that paycheck and on the next thing. And so I try to warn people about that trap and that this is just how society's evolved. So
sure.
what you need to do is just think for yourself, critically think for yourself, and create your own measures of success. It's not the car and what everybody else is doing. Be really, really truthful about what you want, what makes you happy, what's going to make you um, fulfilled, when you're older, so that you don't have any regrets. And it's cool this isn't like anarchy. This isn't like, don't get a job, go lay on a beach, travel the world.
Right.
This is my message is for people who still want to create things and want to do good work and want to accomplish stuff. And the message is like, figure out what success is for you. What does that look like? That's the ultimate goal. And we get to define it. And then you can create, there's millions of pathways to get to whatever version of success that is. But it takes some time and takes some inner work, and it takes some, really thoughtful noodling on difficult questions. But it starts with what success is for you and no one else.
Huge challenge for everybody, I think, is because you as you do acquire these things and as you do set up a social structure, your kids go to private school or whatever, all the things that you can do when you're doing well at work, you create a system around yourself that has those same expectations. And it's really hard to extract yourself from the values of the people around you, even if they
Yeah.
are money driven and not self-driven. But I love that I love that challenge of trying to figure out what you want to be years from now, because I don't think people do that inner work. Uh, Coaching is so fundamental to this whole process. I mean, you can read as many self-help books as you want, and there are some
Right.
really great ones. I mean, it's not to take
Yep.
anything away from all the books that are written with great ideas and great motivations, but so there's something special about working with somebody on this regular basis and helping you stay true to the mission and stay with it. Is there a way that you can imagine that this process can be made more affordable to people who don't have the thousands of dollars that are required really for an annual coaching process and still want to go through this?
Yeah. So my the course that's out there on my website is called Advantage Mapping Foundations. It's $150. People, you can go through it. It's video coursework. Go at your own pace, dissecting your life in 8 areas of advantage, getting you
Right?
to kind of coalesce those things, build a stack you can believe in, think about success, do a few different iterations on success, and then start to create a few different opportunity areas or a portfolio of, let's say, 2 to 3 options that you could start to explore that are more aligned with your natural advantages and where you want to take your life. So that is one way. It's sort of a foundational approach for all of my other coaching clients to go through, and so they all do it. It's what I'm teaching the college kids as well. So that's one way. I think the more that we just talk about the deep problems and issues that people face along the journey, I think helps open up people's eyes earlier in the process, and they start to try to be more playful and exploration minded with their career instead of just linear. Okay, I have one job, I have one option to move up. And I think that is happening, and it's helping, which is great. The real challenge is where somebody says, I want to make a change, but I still have family and I still have obligations to provide for. And so that's where the real coaching is tough to replicate. Like, how do I create time and energy at my job, but still do a good job so I keep my paycheck going, and then
Right,
build this sort
right.
of off ramp in a gradual way. Like that's where it kind of gets a little hairier and more difficult to just put in a course or,
Right.
write a book on.
Well, I appreciate your straightforwardness about that. I think group coaching can help, but I think,
Sure.
the investment in coaching, there's a reason why coaching costs a little bit of money on an hourly basis or on a package basis, because it does take, somebody working through that. But the return on the investment is for this long-term view, and it's really hard to do a lot of this work on your own. I think that back in the day, there was a book called "What Color's Your Parachute," and it took you through all the exercise I'm sure some of which are integrated in your program, the same types of visioning exercises and everything else. But you kind of got to the end, and you said, well, so what? Now I have this stuff, and I don't really know what to do with it because the world is vast and hard to understand
Yeah.
how those skills and that curiosity, like you say, are mapped to something else
Right.
and how it fits in. So you also have a community, right? The break community that
Right.
is active and is a resource.
Yes. So I write a newsletter every week. It's called The Break. There's over 14,000 people who are subscribed to that. So that's one way you can kind of for free get some of the crazy thoughts that are going through my head. If you were to join the Advantage Mapping program or buy that course, there is another community for online community for people to meet each other, ask questions, interact, who are all taking that course. Um, and obviously, I write a lot on LinkedIn, and so that's another way that people can kind of join my community, join in a discussion about some of these key issues without, having to fork over the credit card or worry
Right.
about any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I really strongly I always tell everybody every time I have a coach on who gives free coaching, I always say take advantage of that free coaching, even if it's an hour and you never, you go on and take many free coaching hours. Take advantage of that, and I think using resources like yours earlier rather than later is really key. If you're a young dad and a potential change is a long way off, just stimulating your brain with some of these more. They're more long-term, they're more imaginative, creative thoughts rather than what I think we tend to go to is the podcast, the podcast or the newsletters that are like, quick idea, here's how to, make $100,000 while you sleep type of things. And those are everywhere. And like you said, it's a bright, shiny object, but it's likely not going to be the answer to your problem because even if it was easy for somebody, I mean, there's a reason why they're hawking their how-to thing rather than just staying with it with their job that's making so much money. But it's not going to map to who you are specifically, and that's the key. Because you could do
Yeah.
well, but never be happy and fulfilled.
Yeah. And I keep coming back to this idea that all of those things that you see, make $100,000 here, drop shipping is the way to go, build a blog, whatever it may be. They're shiny objects for a reason. They sound great. They are selling people what they want, that quick path, easy path to making a lot of money or whatever. But what happens is people go from course to course to course. They buy all of these things, they look at them all, they don't do anything. And it's because none of those things are scratching the itch inside. They're not aligned, they're not finding any type of creative purpose in those things. It's just another way to maybe make a buck. And at the end of the day, the issue you're feeling is am I living up to what my expectations of myself? Am I doing the things that I wanted to do as a kid? Like, am I showing my kids what it means to be bold and courageous and all of these values that we want to teach our kids? Am I going after my dreams or not? Right? Am I telling my kids that they can do it, but I'm not doing it? It's that inner conflict. It's hard to articulate. But chasing the shiny objects, maybe one will hit, but you're going to waste a lot of time until you understand the direction that you really want to go, and that you are deeply, deeply connected to. Then go get those things. Then go get the tactics. Go get the how-tos. Go get the learning about how to do some of those things, but not until.
Yeah, I think even worse is that if you have done that and you have bought several courses and looked at several ideas, the worst thing about that chasing after those objects is that you start to develop a feeling of repetitive failure. Like I did this
Right.
one and this one. I failed at implementing all of them. I must not be good, or I must not be a motivated person. I must be a lazy person. All those negative
Yeah.
self-doubts really are generated, I think, a lot by how many things are out there telling us that, if only you bought this thing, you could you could live this crazy lifestyle that everybody thinks they want.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's been really fun talking to you since we both kind of work in the same zone. I think I appreciate the fact that you're taking it from the work part first, because that you got to pay the bills. I mean, that's really the basic thing for a lot of us, and not everybody has the freedom to even have these kind of discussions or think
Right.
about, what they could do with their lives. But if you're well educated and you have potential, the sky's the limit. But you have to find this work-life balance, and figuring out who you are and what your dreams are is really key. So people can find you at michaelgardon.com, as well as I know you've got at careercloud.com. I really like this careercloud.com site because there are a lot of resources on there that, like, questions like, could you be an entrepreneur, things like that are kind of basic, but fundamental to this kind of discussion of, like, could you make a break? Should you make a break at 30, 35, 40, or whatever,
Right.
maybe proactively beforehand. Right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, and uh, I really advise people to take a look at these resources.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a great discussion, and you're doing great work, supporting dads and families, and trying to help people have that solid foundation, because that's what life's all about. It's not just work. It's how we build our relationships, especially with the people we care about. So thanks for doing the work
Yeah.
you do.
Well said. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Paul Banis at GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching at GreatDad.com/PQ, a program on resilience. We didn't even get into the resilience part, and maybe we'll do a follow-up podcast on that, because that's another area that I think
Yeah.
totally dovetails with what we're talking about and is so fundamental too to reacting in this crazy world that seems to be changing, before our eyes.
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks. Stay
Thank you.
strong.